Good morning, crime community. I'm here to read about Elizabeth Barrett Browning, How to Be Autonomous. Inward evermore, to outward, so in life and so in art, which still is life. The auspiciously named Villa de Belladonna, near the Piazza de Santa Maria Novella in France, is a cool chasm in which the bright April sun only makes it between the wide eaves of the Renaissance townhouse, but less than 200 meters away from the giant chess piece of the Duomo Baptistery and Giotto's Tower. It's here just after months of Elizabeth's miscarriage that she, Robert, and Wilson settle into comfortable new lodgings. They're in search of better climate, closer to where the action is. Happiness, it seems, is infinitely perfectible. I persuaded Robert to get a piano, and we have a good one, a grand, including a hire of music for about 10 shillings a month. Our payment for the apartment includes everything. We have real cups instead of famous mugs of pizza, and a complement of spoons and knives and forks. Nay, we have cantanters, and champagne glasses. As Wilson says succinctly, it is something like, once again, the couple ordered in their meals from the trattoria, and they acquire a donna de Facenda, who comes for a few hours every day to make the beds, clean the rooms, brush Robert's clothes, wash up the cups and saucers, etc. In 1847, Florence had crisscrossed by English households and the network of tradespeople attuned to their needs. It attracted English visitors too. Couple of days after the arrival, the Brownings find themselves hosting Anna Jameson and Geraldine, homeward bound and eager to toast April 23rd, Shakespeare's birthday, with a bottle of wine from Arezzo. The runaways seem to have set up young Getty, a poor example. In Rome, she's fallen in love with a bad artist, an unrefined gentleman, a Roman Catholic, converted from Protestantism, a poor man, a red beard, as Elizabeth notes with amusement. Nevertheless, the women stay a week celebrating the Maritimo Miracoloso with as much love at the end of nearly 8 months as in the beginning, of which Mrs. Jameson is such a key witness for literary London, and literary London singles its approval. In May, Miss Forster of the Examiner sends greetings while news arrives that John Aberman, Herald, editor of the Christian Monthly magazine, is lecturing on the poems of Robert and Elizabeth Barrett Browning, now joined together in the bonds of holy matrimony. Certainly, if ever there was a union indicated by the finger of heaven itself and sanctioned and prescribed by the eternal laws, it seemed to me to be this, purrs Robert's literary mentor, Thomas Carlyle. Fashionable callers at the Via delle Belladonna range from American artist, writer George William Curtis, unrelated to the Curtises, and sculptor Hiram Powers, and old neighbors from among the English gentry. Elizabeth's flattering Hiram Powers, Greek slave, will appear in her poems 1850, and Browning's respond differently to Hope End acquaintances, Captain John Hanford and his sister Fanny, getting them to witness the marriage propriety settlement that Robert has just asked John Kenyon to have drawn up, and it doesn't hurt him one bit to have such well-connected visitors witnessing this legal agreement by which Robert returns to Elizabeth all the wealth that otherwise passed automatically to him on their marriage, and in so doing so, he's no bounty hunter. Elizabeth seems to come over all aflutter at telling this to Arabella. It was 10:30, and Robert said, "Now, Ba, do you lie down on the sofa, and I will read to you." "Oh," I exclaimed, throwing myself down in utter prostration in body and soul. "If you read a page of it to me, I shall be fast asleep. It's your deed, you will please to remember, your and Mr. Kenyon's, and not mine by any matter of means." Well, and how do you think the discussion ended? How would it read it either? He wouldn't have read it either. Don't believe a word of it. This is a scenario staged by a woman as determined as she is intelligent. Woman wants to give Robert all the possesses and also to put that impulse in writing. At the same time, she's determined to make his renunciation as public as possible. The sisters are corresponding regularly now, though Elizabeth still gets homesick. I dream of you often and cry in my sleep. 3 of her brothers also write. George sends a package of magazines and a book he's careful to inscribe, Mrs. R. Browning. Henry, long the most resistant to their father's sways, mails a letter, and so does Stormy, settled this spring back in Jamaica away from Papa. Trippy sends a loving greetings, but in a way, her father is right. Elizabeth's departure has gone to the heart of the family's sense of itself. Now the sisters only criticize Papa to each other. It really does, at this distance, appear to be quite a monstrous state of things, and Elizabeth unapologetically includes Henrietta's unofficial fiance, Captain Surtees, in family greetings. One leaves out Bummy, though, when their unmarried Anne shouldered with the wicked stepmother role of her sister's death in 1828. She sometimes crossed swords with the strong-willed eldest Barrett daughter. Even in the Torquay years, according to Henrietta, she is sometimes even disposed to scold me a little. It's sometimes a look coldly upon Ba, which has made her feel nervous and fidgety. Perhaps carrying work is simply not Bummy's nature. But what she feels about her brother-in-law, whom she knows since they were both teenagers, is an intriguing blank. Presumably, she found him likable enough when she became his confidant during the difficult departure from Hope End. 15 years later, this impression of intimacy is reinforced as she takes his side against the newlyweds. It's entirely possible that she expects to gain absolutely nothing by this. Mary is dead. Mary, a dead sister's wife, has been illegal since 1835. It is voidable and attracted social opprobrium even before then, but feelings can be legislated for perhaps. She shouldn't forget that back in 1828, Bummy was only a year older than Elizabeth, and now plenty young women to feel the push and pull of flattery and desire. Or perhaps her motives are purely principled. After all, the family sense of what possibly, even morally permissible, has been shaken. It will take Surtees and Henrietta another 4 years to follow Elizabeth's precedent, but this is rapid progress by Barrett standards. Besides, the 3 more unofficial liaisons are to follow. Sixth son Alfred, the unfortunately nicknamed Daisy, having celebrated Henrietta's 1850 marriage with the 72 stanza epic, will go on to marry against Papa's wishes in 1855. Even after their father's death, the Barrett boys seem to associate romance with the clandestine. Stormy's 2 brothers work out of wedlock in Jamaica. Eva the first, just before Papa dies, are educated in the island by the governess, whom Stormy briefly marries, and later in France. The girls, their mother, and the governess all have mixed heritage, and it's noticeable that Stormy never brings them home to Montgomeryshire estate. But then neither in the previous generation did everyone's favorite Uncle Sam and his illegitimate daughter, Elizabeth. Stormy's and indeed Elizabeth's first cousin, who will be the mother of Stormy's children, finally after joining the brother in Jamaica in 1864, said he too will have mixed heritage daughter by his housekeeper. All these illegitimate Barrett children who've past and future uncomfortably straddle both sides of the Caribbean violent radical divide, faces lives de-established by her father's clandestine behavior, and so damage passes down through the Barrett family. But these ripple effects are in the future. Summer 1847 sees Elizabeth increasingly out and about, exploring Flance's tawny stuccoed neighborhoods and its art treasures. It is so delightful to see her enjoyment everything that is beautiful, from sentiment to form of color she seizes directly, but particularly in sentiment. Henry Hanford reports Michelangelo's tomb and Galileo's Via are trumpeted by a tea party with a couple who actually knew some of Elizabeth's literary heroes. The Hopners befriended Byron and Shelley's in Venice, and when Mr. Hopner, who's vice consul there, the Elizabeth is thrilled by the connection. She doesn't quite seem to realize that these were no casual acquaintances, but the family who's fostered Byron's daughter, Allegra, and took in the distraught Shelley when their daughter Celia, Clara, had died in 1818 apparently. On their arrival, they ate nothing except water gruel and boiled cabbages and cherries because it was a principle of Shelley's not to eat animal food. And Mrs. Hopner did, and she said, seduce him into placing roast beef and pudding. Dear Mr. Shelley, you are so thin. Fancy all this sad with a pretty foreign accent. Now, if you would take my advice, you would have very little slice of beef today. You are an Englishman and you ought to like beef. A very little slice of this beef, dear Mr. Shelley. And so she said, by degrees, took a little beef and immediately confessed that he did feel a great deal better. As literary gossip, this is astonishingly incomplete. Yet for Elizabeth, it establishes continuity across the intervening quarter century between her own and romantic poet's lives, and all she and Robert has also fled to Italy to search of freedom to choose as to live as they choose, and her belief that their relationship is profoundly more authentic than the mere convention. We could not lead the abominable lives of married people all around, we could not, is innocently but undeniably Shelleyan. The couple's own literary life is continuing. They're both at work, Elizabeth's composing poems 1850 and Robert's polishing poems 1849, and Elizabeth's poems appear regularly in Backwoods. In July, the upsides to the comfortable 7-room apartment in the Piano Nobile of Palazzo de Guidi, which belonged to the Guidi who intermarried with Dante's Ugliano family of Pisa, who would become their permanent home and inspire one of Elizabeth's most important poems, but they do not know that yet. For now, they simply have taken a 3-month lease on furnished rooms recently vacated by a Russian prince. The Palazzo, in the situation of Florence on Piazza San Felice, 100 yards from the Pita Palace, admission to the green maze of the Beaubilly Gardens beyond is included in the rent. The 8 windows, which are large, open to a sort of balcony terrace, which is built out from the house, giving it an antique and picturesque appearance in the exterior. And you may suppose that a pleasure it is to have such a place to walk up and down when you are not included, to go into the streets opposite to the gray walls of the church, San Felice, and we walk into the balcony, listen to the organ and choir. They fall into a happy routine. At 8 o'clock in the evening, we get to walk in the comparative pool, stand on the bridge of San Toritina, and go to eat in ice at Doni's, then return to supper and don't sit up 3 minutes afterwards. Elizabeth develops a delight in clothes, a green plaid, which is Robert's favorite, and which I just begin to wear every day, the silk shot, the blue barrage, the prettiest possible slippers which Henrietta has made for me. Wilson, freed from the beauty duties of travel and by the Donna de Forenzita and Zunazia, which is also them across town, is once again the proper lady's maid. Busy sewing's Elizabeth. Little front caps were very pretty of net in the old fashion, but with the worsted edge and slight as possible to embroidered it all, and very pretty and expensive of a few pennies. Roberts likes them, so that I scarcely wear anything else, and have them in various colors, blue, green, lilac, purple, and all my hair done in the old Brecon plait, behind which Wilson sighs in the doing of. Only Flush is not quite as usual. He's like mistress. He finds the heat hard to sleep through, while Wilson, he suffers from stomach upsets and constipation. These troubles pass, but it's plain he needs warming. He is in great spirits and full of caprices as ever, only thin. But why should he be thin, I wonder? Not the little household takes its front row seats to the drama of the Italian republicanism. They've arrived in the Pennsylvania at almost the tipping point of the rigor momento, the cultural and political resurgence that will eventually culminate in the creation in the Kingdom of Italy in 1861, 3 decades since the 1815 Congress of Vienna reimposed Habsburg Australian control of the fractured territory, especially through the rule of northern Italian states, have seen guerrilla action and sporadic insurrections and the foundation of the secretive Carbonaria in the south and the Lagovine Italia north in the border of Marseille. On September 12th, their first wedding anniversary, Elizabeth and Robert watch and wave as for far above 3 hours of infinite possession of citizens and 40,000 inhabitants of the different Tuscan states. Deputations and companies of various kinds pass under our windows with all their various flags and symbols into the Piazza Pitti, where the Duke and his family stood in tears at the window to receive the thanks of his people. By granting the right to form a civic guard, Australian Grand Duke Leopold II seems to have taken a first step towards offering Tuscan independence to the Habsburg Empire. The excitement is contagious. The windows dropping down their glittering draperies seem to grow larger with the multitude of pretty heads and of hands which throw out flowers and wave white handkerchiefs. This was not an inch of wall, not alive. If the eyes might judge, clouds and flowers and laurel leaves from fluttering down on the advancing procession, and the clapping of hands and frenetic shouting, and the music which came in gushes, with the exulting faces and the kisses given for every exultation. Even Flush can't get carried away and goes missing while being walked. Robert has a nasty cold, spends the anniversary even searching for him. only for the little dog to return the next day, none the worse for his wear. But the couple don't forget their own celebration of all the excitement. As an anniversary thank you, they give Wilson a turquoise brooch brought to the night before the Ponte Vecchio. In return, she makes Yorkshire Ned cakes for tea. Next February, when Leopold grants Tuscany his own constitution, Elizabeth and Robert will still closer triumph of his triumphant arrival at the St. Pete Palace, in which midst of the Milky Way of wax and torchlights, you would have thought all of the stars out of heaven had fallen into the piazza. But then they will have left Palazzo Guidi, which the rent doubles in the high season. Here it's not winter, which cheap, but summer with its risk of cholera and typhoid, it's almost unmanageable heat. But after agonizing on October 19th, they move just up to Via Maggio in rooms so cold and uncomfortable, they almost immediately move again to a little baby house, actually in the Piazza dei Piedi. And here, from the double windows of their cramped new drawing room, they shared a grandstand view of history and numerous visitors. And came Wilson to announce Count and Countess Contrell, Mr. Tulk, Mr. and Mrs. Lay, Mrs. Lay's nurse, and two children, Mr. Dr. Allnutt, all come to crowd into our little drawing room to see the festa in the piazza. Sometimes this is a little all a bit too much. February 48 seems both Browning's preoccupied. Robert's worried about paying two rents, which has made living Palazzo Guidi a false economy. Elizabeth is busy writing a long political poem and is also pregnant again. Full of hopeful anticipation, despite continuing to having periods, I have had my usual health of regularly as possible, and I have laughed and cried in one or another of the fatal uncertainty, although I know that the habit of miscarriages is hard to break. She can't resist dropping a hint about morning sickness to Henrietta. Well, very well I am, the exception of a sickness in the morning, which isn't the pleasant thing in the world on getting up, but the habit of miscarriages is indeed hard to break. A fortnight after she smelled the letter, Elizabeth loses the baby. Possibly the bleeding she's experienced is a sign of the pregnancy she has already lost and inviable, and yet again she seems not to quite bereft. Possibly she can't still imagine a new kind of love to rival her grand amour, and she wrote to Miss Mitford while she was pregnant, of still it is natural to be rather anxious, not one or more than less than a woman. She still strikes more often, and I have not right to ask for more. Robert has the dear goodness to say that he could never love me as his child as he loves his wife. Perhaps God should keep his gifts of children for such women who have missed something of the ideal love. I guess Elizabeth thinks that she missed part of the ideal love by not being able to have a baby and keep having to have miscarriages. But we will continue this love story tomorrow. In a world of hate and violence and war, we pray for peace in the world. Have a good day.